First of all, good morning. I am absolutely excited to be here, and I will begin by saying I am not a motivational speaker, I'm a confrontational speaker. And what I say by that is, as we talk about the things that we're going to talk about, and I promise my friend Sarah, who just gave me an amazing story, that I will get us back on task. When we talk about the things that we're going to talk about, and we're under the great leadership of the organization that put this together, I think we have to put race in the center of the conversation. Now, all of us in here are not athletes, but the school system or the systems that we talk about have become masterful at dodging the ball of race. And we're going to have to get horrible at dodging that ball of race and talking about it. So, you heard my bio and all that stuff that I've done. A lot of us in here, PhDs, EDDs, MSWs, and all that stuff. But as we talk about cultural competency, none of that matters. We talked about the principal over here that's doing a lot of great work. I think some of the important letters behind my name are D-A-D, S-O-N, and if you ask my wife, she'll say I'm D-U-M-B. But those are the things that define us. These letters in front of me and these letters behind some of us really is not what makes a difference. Just like the zip code should not make a difference. Just like our area code should not make a difference. But again, my wife would say, first of all, if you go to my wife and say, hey, have you seen Dr. Marshall? She'll be like, you talking about John? She refuses that, and I encourage you all to understand who we are as educators and people that are trying to help. You heard some of the things that I have allegedly ushered in, removing the code of conduct that came with a lot of resistance, ushering in a males of color school that came with a lot of resistance. And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about it candidly. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh, eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow I will be at the table when company comes, and nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am. I too am America. I maintain Dayton Public, I maintain Montgomery County, that there are still people that are trying to get to the table. And it is our job to make sure that happens. I maintain that we must understand that until we really address the system, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that this poem is still going to be very, very relevant. And in a lot of cases, even some of us are still not at the table, even though we're in this room. So how are we going to move this work forward? And how are we going to do it in such a way that is done right? So if there's the first thing, I don't know if we're taking notes or y'all just listening, getting your PD credit, whatever. Let's talk about this. Equity does not have to be hard. It just has to be brave. Some of the things that we know need to happen get slowed down because of bureaucracy, the meeting before the meeting, explaining why we have to remove deliberate disruption, even though the research has said for 20 years that it is subjective to students of color. It took 2 years for deliberate disruption to get removed off Jefferson County Public Schools Code of Conduct. Now, we can talk about, well, we don't have enough information. We can talk about we're creating unsafe schools. And if you Google me, there's actually an article that says Jefferson County Public Schools looking to weaken discipline. Let me pause there because my friend Sarah has a daughter that looks like mine. And the work of a chief equity officer comes with a lot of trauma and drama. My oldest daughter that is going through the same public school system. Now, remind you, the title said Jefferson County Public Schools looking to weaken discipline. My daughter, who goes to Jefferson County Public Schools, who has a father, again, D-U-M-B, who has a father that is agitating, and I guess sometimes instigating, that was fair, instigating a system, gets assaulted behind that article. She gets assaulted behind that article. Look, wait, it gets better, from another child of Jefferson County Public Schools whose dad is a counselor. So if we're talking about codes of conduct and we're talking about improving outcomes for students and we're talking about equity doesn't have to be hard or be brave, and we're talking about a black girl getting assaulted because her black father is trying to improve the code of conduct by a white boy from a counselor of public schools, and we go to the meeting, they say, well, Dr. Marshall, it's this article that caused it. But it's really not the article that caused that situation. It's not the article at all. The language was bad, The way it was titled was bad. But what Dr. Marshall's trying to do is change a code of conduct that is deliberately disrupting and disproportionately suspending students of color. But the funny part behind that, if you can see a light in the shadow, if you can see some light in the darkness, is my daughter was assaulted from the code by something that we were changing in the code of conduct. The student did not get suspended, but I have no more cheeks to turn, and my daughter is told not to, so her being the black belt she is in 6th grade ended up getting something also on that code of conduct. But I say all that to say this is a lot of tough work, and this tough work comes with a lot of different things. So as we talk about this, let's talk about excellence and exclusion. The Du Bois Academy, which opens in August for males, targeted for males of color, anyone can apply. You can Google that drama as well. I challenge the school board and I challenge the district to look at how are we going to create a school that can kind of change the narrative of how we think about our boys of color. Now, I know we're at an early childhood conference, so I'll say this actually should have and could have started in elementary school, but Jefferson County Public Schools and middle schools, we're really seeing a true declination in achievement and behavior between 5th and 6th grade. So we decided to tackle that. I maintain that if I had came, or if the community had came and said, we want another alternative school because these boys are bad. We want another alternative school because they're misbehaving. We want another alternative school because they need so much mental health. I think I could have probably got that approved in 3 months. But when we talk about excellence for students of color, when we talk about excellence for all, it can only mean the A, not the ALL of everyone. And how do we get to a point where we can actually say, this school is about excellence and it doesn't come with the problems that some of these other schools come with? Right now, some of us can say we want to create an alternative school for our misbehaved kids. I maintain in Montgomery County, in Tallahassee, in Memphis, in Buffalo, some of the other districts, that might not come with as much resistance as if you said you want a gifted and talented school for polka-dotted girls. Because excellence sometimes, unless we're talking about a specific group, comes with some issues and some problems. And we have to ask ourselves why. Now, me being a chief equity officer, I can tell you that's not my best job. I am probably one of the best teachers on earth. And I am very comfortable with the awkward silence. I am not really, I forgot my fidget spinner. I have a lot of issues. I'd be up here spinning a fidget spinner right now. But I can tell you what I'm not going to do is sit up here and talk. This table, y'all are in for it. My dear fraternity brother here, there will be some questions that we're going to ask. And the awkward pause is very comfortable with me. So if I ask a question, we got to sit like this. We're going to sit like this. But I'm not going to just sit up here and be talking this entire time. Are we okay with that? Doesn't matter because I'm going to do it anyway. All right. So the department to which I lead, and I'm going to challenge the districts to actually start having chief equity officers. I think it's criminal that we have more chief business officers than chief equity officers, and we're going to have to look at that. The department to which I lead entails the following units: equity and inclusion, compliance and investigations, homeless education, student due process, community data specialist, site-based decision-making, gifted and talented, community engagement, community generalist, foster care, diversity hiring specialist, and volunteer talent center. I lead about 97 people, and the main job of the chief equity officer in Jefferson County Public Schools is to instigate. So as we celebrate the improvement of college and career readiness, it is my job to be that person that says, but what about the ones that didn't get here? It is my job to be the Grinch that stole celebrations and say, but there are so many left behind. It is my job to say, what about the students on the other side of Edwin Moses exit as we pull into Dayton? And what are we going to do with those students? And we cannot be happy until we celebrate all students graduating. So as we talk about the equity scorecard, one of the things we put up, and I challenge you to actually envision this, we put up our county map, and we put up by colors where we have low literacy. We put up by colors where we have high suspensions. But I maintain, and I hope, is the media here today? Take note. Take note, because they're going to be at y'all schools, principals, and something bad goes on. But where are they when we're actually trying to close gaps and do some things to tell the right story? So I put these maps up, and literacy, suspensions, numeracy, college and career readiness, and there's red areas. Now, we can ignore race all we want, but we're smart people in here. The red area is the lowest of all those things. What do you think demographically that area consists of? My man right here. What do you think demographically, or you, since you're staring at me, what do you think those areas consist of by demographics, with the red area being the lowest? What does it look like? Poverty, what else? Y'all, we're gonna have to say it. Yeah, everybody repeat after me, black. Let's say it one more time, black. All right, so here's the thing though, when the newspapers say Dayton County Public Schools or whatever they're gonna say, schools report card, public schools report card, what it must say, and we must challenge the media to say, is Ohio's report card, because it's not just a school issue. I maintain the system is not broken. It is doing exactly what it is designed to do. And when I say that, we must understand that we have to get past the justice system, the education system, it's all working very, very well to get the disproportionate numbers that we have. So I go to the mayor. Any mayors in here today? Where's my mayor at? She left. All right, so as I get to the mayor and we put our maps up, the mayor's homicide rates are just as red as my literacy rates. The mayor's unemployment rates are just as red as my literacy rate. It's a system issue that must be addressed. So you can't just put it on the public school system, the charter school system, or any of those things. So one of the things I would challenge you to do, and I know we have some great psychometricians in here, is look at your maps. And I guarantee you your maps are as racially telling as your achievement maps. And we have to look at that. One of the things, and I know we have some early childhood people in here, and we heard a great story from Robin around literacy and books. But do you know that the majority of our public schools right now, public school libraries only have 7.6 African American books with characters in them that look like them? I think Dayton is right around the cusp of 50% African American, or maybe even more. What are we telling our students if when you go to check out a book, that is what they can check out? I think that helps them check out of school. I think until we do simple, again, this isn't hard. It's called going to your ordering and receivings and ordering some black books. How do we do that, and why is that so difficult? And I maintain, maybe not in this room, in every other place in the world, that would come with some questions and that would come with some issues. But this is a simple thing when we talk about the inoculation and psychosis of our students. You can go to this public school library where we tout that we are about all kids. We can lay out some black books in February, but overall, how do we do this where you can walk in on any day and get books that look like you? So how do we do that? You can do that today. That's an easy fix. As your numbers are growing and your numbers are going up, and I must take my hat off to this organization that is helping these numbers improve, because that is amazing and you should not take that lightly. I want to give a round of applause for that, because I was actually impressed, and I don't impress easily. So good job for that. So as we talk about that, that's an easy fix, but why haven't we done it? You can do that tomorrow. You can definitely do it before school starts next year. But who in here, librarian, early childhood, community agitator and instigator, who's going to raise enough hell to make sure that gets done? And I encourage that we're going to have to do those kind of things. So, the code of conduct. We understand that the code of conduct is subjective, or so we think. But when we talked about deliberate disruption, we were looking at things with our students. And I sent my friend Robin a picture of a fifth grader being put in bracelets, not beautiful bracelets, handcuffs in fifth grade for an infraction called deliberate disruption. Now, I have a twin brother. You couldn't tell the difference if he came up here and started talking to you right now. But the way him and I, one of our biggest discussions at Sunday dinner is who's prettier, Beyonce or Rihanna. And let me tell you why this is important, because it's subjective. It's opinion. Deliberate disruption is the exact same way. I could be in trouble in this school for chewing gum and in this school for throwing a desk out the window, but it all qualifies as deliberate disruption. However, the students that look like me for chewing gum get harsher punishment and harsher treatment. But Louisville and this district, if y'all haven't went through it, would lose their mind if we start talking about take off something so subjective. And we have to ask, again, I told y'all the word we need to say. Why is that so hard? Everybody repeat after me. Black. Okay. Because what we're doing is loosening a code of conduct to let certain students misbehave. I'm telling you, there are babies getting taken out of here in bracelets in fifth grade or 5 years old. And to remove deliberate disruption became so hard of a thing that it came with a lot of resistance. I hope your brakes work. Police escorts to go present on delivering a code of conduct. Why do we have to do that? A superintendent that's getting bothered and yelled at for letting the school system go astray behind removing something as deliberate disruption. So when we talk about solutions, one of the things, because we're supposed to talk about one step, I dare you to take this step and challenge your code of conduct, but you're going to have to. You're going to really have to look at that, and you're going to have to see how it moves forward. One of the other things is we talk about with community engagement. I know we have some higher ed people in here. One of the hustles that we have to be aware of, and I'm sure it's not happening here, I discovered as the chief equity officer that we are sending teachers back to our system ready to teach. And then we find out that they're not ready to teach literacy. And then the university that graduates them comes and raises their hand and says, I have a $2 million program to teach teachers literacy. There's going to have to be some accountability at the higher ed level on getting them ready before they come to us. There's going to have to be some that's a nice hustle. Can you imagine? That is a nice hustle to graduate them, get them to schools, get them to Edwin, whatever schools are over there by Edwin Moses exit, and then say, yeah, but you know what, give them back to me for another meal, and then they'll be ready. So there's a program called CARDS. It's with the University of Louisville, where I'm from, Culture, Access, Resiliency, Diversity, and Service. We are sending teachers back to school to get a diversity literacy certificate and get trained in cultural competency. Newsflash, most of the classes that we are sending them back to are not in the College of Ed. They're at Pan-African Studies, they're in sociology, they're in history, they're in psychology. These teachers, as a whole, now it's a small group because that it costs money, and even though things are working, unless it makes everybody happy, you can't do it. These teachers, in many cases, are outperforming our NBCT teachers as it relates to performance and closing the gap. With like-minded classes, so you have a class over here that's full of African-American males and a class over here that's full of African-American males. Our CARDS teachers, not nationally board certified, are doing more things with better grades and moving students further faster than our national board certified. So here's something, since I have to give you examples, challenge University of Dayton, challenge other people to create programs. Graduate them ready, first of all. But let's get some programs where teachers can go back and get this stuff that colleges of ed are not asking. Second thing, I wrote in the State of Black Louisville. Some people got mad at me, but that's fine. I wrote in the State of Black Louisville, what would happen right now, you all, if you did a syllabi audit on the pre-college or the college or the pre-education syllabi of your colleges of education? Will we see the words cultural competency overall in all of your College of Education syllabi? Will we even see words around race and equity on your college syllabi? If we're interviewing superintendents, there's research coming out that says the majority of public school urban superintendents weren't asked a single question about equity. How are we going to change all of these? So I'm asking you questions, but since we're smart, I'm hoping you understand these are your one steps that we can take. And I'm not going to give you these mamby-pamby simple things to do. If we're going to really change equity, let's do some real things and let's really change systems, because it's the system that's not broken. In the breakout session, I'm going to share a lot of programs that we're doing, but just like we're not going to suspend our way out of it, we're not going to program our way out of this problem either. So how are we going to do this is to look at systemic change and challenge those that do not wish to do so. I know not in Dayton, I know in every other public school system this is happening, but in a teacher's lounge right now, we're sizing kids up. That doesn't happen here. But in a teacher's lounge right now, we're sizing teachers up. We're dismissing the data that has been given to you. We're dismissing all the facts, and we're just saying, if John Marshall would just sit down and shut up, we could get it done. And after spring break, We're going to graduate teachers from the University of Dayton. They're going to come in ready to rock and roll. And by the way, I'm getting tired of standing back here, so I'm going to grab this mic and start walking around in a minute, I can tell. But we're going to challenge teachers. These teachers are going to come in ready to rock and roll, and they're going to get in that teacher's lounge, and they're going to lay out their little log and who they're going to get. And some teacher, oh, you got John Marshall. Oh, you got Rithika. Well, if you just hold on long enough and don't retire, you'll get the good classes. The child hasn't entered the room yet, and this is what's going on inside. Not in Dayton, but everywhere else, this is what's going on. So one of the things that we have to do is change the narrative and change the behaviors. I do not believe in anybody that I interview, if they say, well, I believe everybody's here to do a good job. That's impossible based on this data. Now let's just, some of y'all ain't like that, but I'll say it again just because you didn't like it. Everybody is not about the business of kids, even though they're in the kid business. And what are we going to do to address that? Because you got John and you got those kids on the other side of Edwin Moses. Yes, you do, and we're going to have to figure out what that looks like and how we change that. So there's some language that has to come about of our work and equity work when you're working with early childhood, when you're working with urban students, on how we address that. Because the nullification of this great teacher that's not ready but almost ready from University of Dayton, University of Louisville, to walk into that teacher's lounge, because we know what the brain does. This is the first Google of all Googles. So we know what the brain does. When you heard that name and you heard of me before I walked in, you're already sized up. And that becomes a problem. So those are some of the things that we have to work on. So we need to really change how we enter for the first day of school. Some of the work that I'm doing in another district is around just literally the first day of school and how we're going to address and celebrate kids. So there are some simple things around pep rallies. There's simple things around language. One of the things that one of the superintendents is bravely doing is actually all first-year teachers and second-year teachers don't get to hang out with y'all. They don't get to see y'all until the first day of school when kids come. Now that's an indictment, but we're to that point in some schools, whether you like it or not. So how do we change that is to really understand what we're doing and how we move some things forward. I'm gonna talk briefly about curriculum. Until hidden figures become unhidden, it's a travesty. This curriculum in which we are giving our students, it says based on the untold true story of America. It needs to say based on the intentionally untold true story of America. Our curriculum in and of itself, quote me on this, curriculum specialists, our curriculum in and of itself can improve behavior, decrease dropouts, decrease suspensions, improve students wanting to become teachers, and improve the sense of belonging for students of color, and caveat, white students too. So what we have to do with our curriculum is make it more equitable and more accurate. Because if African Americans were really brought to this world at the world stage of slavery, you've probably left out about 500 years, at least. And moving forward, there's a lot of inaccuracies moving forward on that. I didn't know, and I was mad because my daughter knew before me, I didn't know that there was some sisters that help America get to the moon. My daughter is sitting here dropping knowledge on me, and I pretend to be, as the kids say, woke. What could that have changed for me and other students if I had been able to sit and look in the classroom and see a teacher that looks like me, B, an AP that looks like me, C, a principal that looks like me, and then curriculum that looks like me? What would that have done to me or the young ladies if they had seen that? But it has to become a blockbuster movie before it happens. So curriculum specialists, I challenge you, good luck, because you'll get stuff on your windshields for this too. I challenge you to change the curriculum. And it might not need to be going to, Ohio Department of Education, because it doesn't have to be hard, it just has to be brave. Just go home and do it right now. Just go pick some lessons and make them more accurate. And challenge the students to actually look at it differently. These are things the research has said and proven that it can happen. Why are we still sitting here not having these ladies in the curriculum? I say again, because the system is not broken, it is doing exactly what it is designed to do. I can tell some of y'all don't like it, but guess what? You can finish, yeah, well, never mind. So, we are also very inclusive of some of the things we're doing in the district is very inclusive of our faith-based organizations. The faith-based organizations have reached out to my department and my office in the school system and said, we're going to do Vacation Bible School. And I said, good, amen, hallelujah, my kids will be there too. But we want you to help us make Jonah of the Whale standards-based. We want you to help us make Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, how we can do it now. We're not going to prophesize, but we're just going to make sure it aligns with what you're teaching them there based on the standards and these already watered down, inaccurate, exclusionary curriculums that you have. My department has taken the Vacation Bible School lessons, made them standards-based. You can still prophesize at the end, but this part is now connected to standards. This part is now connected to a curriculum that they understand because they have to do it in school. The churches that have done that consistently and are doing it in their after-school programs and Vacation Bible School programs, we are starting to see inches and gains in those students because everywhere they go now is this conversation around standards. Now, I like that, but back to my curriculum thing, I don't like it because we're still not accurate with our whole curriculum. But an example, if we have reverends and pastors and churches in here, whether it's a church big as this or a church with 2 people in it, those are some of the things that we can do. Sit down with the curriculum specialist that just sat here with you and let her tell you, these are some simple things you can do with the stories you're going to teach. And it just actually now sounds like they're back in school and you can make it fun. Program called Readiness. There's a program called Readiness coming out of Jefferson County Public Schools. Ed Week has actually featured it. And it is actually taking canonical, written by white male literature and changing the way in which we teach it. The men in this program, the young boys in this program are actually reading like Lord of the Flies. And we're talking about Lord of the Flies, some white boys that get stranded on an island, they become savage and start killing each other, hating themselves, self-loathing, losing their intelligence. But when we bring it to contextual, for my culturally responsive principle, when we bring it to culturally relevant conversations, you have stuff like, Dr. Marshall, the area of town in which I live in is like this island. Dr. Marshall, the area of town in which I live in has no one to tell us what to do. So we're killing ourselves. Dr. Marshall, I cannot do this multiple choice test, but let me go inside this studio right here. Let me create my own music, because we're teaching them how to design music. We're teaching them how to rap or do whatever they think they're doing. I don't understand all that. And we're teaching them how to do all that. And then they start understanding Lord of the Flies. You can't tell me that there are children on the other side of Edmund Moses that can't relate to Huck Finn. What's easier for me to believe is there's teachers that can't get kids to see Huck Finn in themselves. And we're going to have to understand what that looks like. You're going to, see, the claps get a little smaller when we start talking, but we're going to have to understand what that looks like. And we're going to have to understand how we start teaching. And this starts as early because the research says kids start understanding who they are before they can even talk. So imagine all the microaggressions that the one system, education for money and everything, is telling our students. So you can self-loathe and hate yourself well before you get into school. Early childhood. There are some districts, I will not name them, that we got so pretentious and privileged in our expertise and all these letters behind our name where we were excited about what's going on in early childhood. And this is Big Mama and them teaching early childhood. This is LaWanda teaching early childhood. This is Stacy teaching early childhood. We sat up here on Mount Olympus and said, let's put certified teachers in there. We put certified teachers in there and the preparation went down. Cultural competency is what you need, and LaWanda and them had it. How do we make sure that every teacher has, and you know what it boils down to, 2 words, high expectations, that every teacher is doing those kind of things? How do we make sure that we put culturally competent teachers inside of our schools? Because again, we have all these letters and we have this credential, but that one thing that's missing is high expectations. We all know John Hattie's research said teacher expectation is the biggest indicator of success, but we dodge that. But that's really what we need to start talking about. How do we challenge those things and move them forward? So let's talk about equity and race and equity and race policy. That's my latest trouble that I'm trying to get into. Our equity and race policy, does this thing come out? And I'm getting thirsty. Now, our equity and race policy is the newest thing that we're challenging because we understand that the system in and of itself is not going to change. So we're putting an equity and race policy in place that challenges these 6 things, and we maintain this is for every infrastructure. We need to diversify our curriculum. We need to have cultural competence training. We need to have staff diversity and classroom diversity. Now, y'all gonna get mad, and I will never want to be a superintendent, but I, as the chief equity officer, noticed something when our superintendents came up here. And they are probably awesome superintendents, not knocking that. But that is a statement in and of itself. If we had brought our males, some of the males programs that we're doing in this city alone, in this state alone, and mentoring them, telling them to be teachers, and they sat back there and saw that, maybe they would just stop, and not just stop because teaching is the best thing. Maybe we just told them they can't be a superintendent. How do we address that, and how do we talk about it? That's very simple, because again, equity doesn't have to be hard, it just has to be what? Brave. Can't be coming up here unless everybody's represented. We're going to have to talk about those things. I done got off. Where am I talking about? Okay. Programmatic access. Programmatic access, almost to a scientific fact. How can you determine when you walk into a classroom if the class is gifted and talented or not? Oh, I got some water right here. Thank you. Thank you. My assistant over here just worried that I'm gonna say something embarrassing. She ain't coming up. She got the keys out ready to run. So how can you almost perfect guess if it's a gifted and talented class? Don't be scared. Say it. What? Say it again. So you can walk into a classroom in most public schools, urban or not, and count who is and who's not in there and make almost a very close guess. So programmatic access is something that we must improve on. You can't have a school system, and Jefferson County is no different. The majority of our students are now of color. However, when you go to advanced program classes and gifted and talented classes, you don't see the majority of our students. There's no other corporation that could do that and still stay in existence. So how are we going to fix that? Again, most states have a rule where you can just put sit-ins in the room. Just put them in there. Because what does the research say? If you put them in high expectation classes, they'll rise to the expectation. But there's this thing called the COGAT. There's this stuff called advanced program tests, and it's a cutoff. Actually, I call it a mountain in a block. So we can just easily, one step forward, start letting our parents know that there's this thing called a sit-in or appeal. Inform our parents, and we'll talk more about it, on how they can say, yeah, I know he missed it by 3 or 4 points today, but on this one test. But put him or her in there anyway and see what happens. Another tenet is we're looking at school culture and climate. I have a task force that raises a bunch of hell, and no education employee is on it. Not a single person from Jefferson County Public Schools can be on it. It's just the community. And I'm going to stop here. I am leery, you all, of the term constituents and community because it's 2 different things. The constituent board member is what keeps the board member in the seat. The community is those that sometimes don't trust the public system, but need the public system. We need to stop worrying about constituents and start listening to the community. Our community is really and there's a big difference. I get real leery when we hear elected officials, and that's why I won't be a superintendent, because I think it's actually becoming an elected thing. And you have to capitulate to constituents when the community is in need. The constituent will keep you in the seat, but sometimes that constituent doesn't have interest in graduating more kids. And we're going to have to be serious about that conversation. We're going to have to be serious about what we do as we move forward. But let's really focus in on community, and that's why I'm so glad to be here for this. And I turned down a lot of speaking engagements because I don't think they're really about that life. Because I don't have time to sit up here and keep talking and talking and talking. There's a big difference between collaboration and collaboration. And there's a lot of co-blabbing going on sometimes when we need to be collabing. But community versus constituent is a big difference. And we need to, because public schools were designed to inform and impact the community, get back to that. Central office, departmental resolution, and community of racial equity. So let me go back through these as you talk about, as one of their steps, Robin, might be a policy. Look at diversity in curriculum, cultural competency training, staffing diversity, programmatic access, school culture and climate, central office, departmental resolutions. So central office also has to be responsible for racial equity and community equity. It can't just sit with our principals who are doing pretty much all they can do. If we're not doing it on Olympus, why would we expect the principals to do it as well? Also, show me your budget, I'll show you your values. I don't have to come to any of you all's departments and districts. Show me what your budget is and I'll show you what you value. We have communities and districts, not here, and I don't know, but I'm sure it's not here, that are putting more money into SROs and less into counseling. How do we change that? So here's a big, again, I'm not giving y'all these mamby-pamby things, give them a donut and love them, because sometimes we're literally loving kids to death and not putting high expectations on them. I am talking about, let's really look at this budget and put it in places where there should be no reason why Robin needs to find money for equity scorecards. There should be no reason why we don't have more chief equity officers. It's a testament that we have a whole bunch of chief business officers running around here, but not a lot of chief equity officers. Find money to create a chief equity officer position, and then you'll have jerks like me in every department handling things, moving some things forward, or trying to. But show me your budget, and I'll show you your values. Another program, Coding at the Beach. We understand that there's high expectations. We understand that there's an access issue. We went into one of our most notorious housing projects with some of the most high-end technology, challenged the community to come, and we're going to teach them coding. Now, Coding at the Beach is Beecher Terrace projects, some of the most notorious projects in Louisville, Kentucky, named after Harriet Beecher Stowe. And we taught students for 18 weeks how to code. 8 of those boys, only 16, 17, 18, and now 20, have their own business and are creating internet progress or internet presence for the community. Now, their grades were horrible in school, but they are now coding and creating internet presence for their community. So to say certain comments like, well, let's not give out books because they'll lose them, I don't know if that happens here. Let's not do this and that. Let's not take this equipment down there because it gets stolen. Not one computer was stolen, but 4 young men now own a business and have yet to set foot in college. And some are college bound and some are staying put. But I say all this to say some of this stuff has to be to really just cross that line and go into places and do innovative things. These young men, I was trying my best to bring one of them here. These young men are doing some phenomenal things, and you can look it up, Coding at the Beach. So as we move forward, there's some other things that I really, really do want to talk about, and I'm going to keep us on. Oh, wait a minute, am I off? Is it time for me to sit down? It is time for me to sit down. So I don't know if I told you all anything, but I will end with this. I truly, truly believe, and I truly, truly think that the education part of the system is the only saving grace America has. And I believe that most of the people in this room are and will continue to do a good job. I don't believe there's room for people that aren't trying to do a good job anymore. I don't believe that we have time in the system to tolerate and dismiss. The notion of, well, that's just the way Miss Such and Such is. Just get through that, John, and you'll have a better teacher next year. We need good teachers in every room. We need good programs and good professors and good principals in every room. And we have to get to that. Every school I went to has been labeled a failing school. Now that might mean you probably shouldn't get a chief equity officer, I don't know. But every school I went to was in the hood, was bad, was considered bad, was considered rough. I was one of those that did not raise my hand even though I knew the answer. I was one of those that had teachers that made me raise my hand because I knew the answer. The way I grew up, I have a dorky twin brother that wanted to walk down 36th Street where we grew up with a violin. You can't walk down 36th Street where I'm from with a violin. We fought every day, but we had teachers, when they would take that violin and beat us up with it, we had a teacher that put the violin right back in our hand the next day. We had parents that said, you better come home with that violin. We need teachers that are going to keep putting violins and stuff in kids' hands, and we need community members that are going to make sure that they can walk home safely. But we need to come together and really move this work forward unapologetically. If you look at my tweets, a lot of the hashtag is unapologetically. We have to stop apologizing for doing what's right. There is no more room for people being comfortable. No more room for comfortable conversations. I just got an email as I present, and I'll sit down with this. I got an email as I present the equity and race policy next week. Let's meet and let's talk about what you're going to say, and let's see how we're going to present this to the community, to certain people. I'm not changing how I'm going to say it because no other chief had to change what they're saying when it's time to talk about what gas we're going to use for buses. So we're going to have to really get to the point of dismissing comfort if comfort means status quo and complacency. And we're going to have to really put the stuff in front of us. Thank you all. Please, please, please take that bold step forward, and we can do this.